And tonight on the Wrap, did Lufthansa drop the ball, allowing a stressed-out pilot to fly? Did John Kerry open Pandora's box with a possible nuke agreement with Iran? Plus potluck, yay or nay, and more. It's time for the Daily Wrap. And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, along with my co-host Rick Unger, who was originally slated to play Thurston Howell on Gilligan's Island before what? A hand gliding accident sidelined him a day before production began. What are the odds on that?
One of the great disappointments of my life.
Wow, you would have been so much better as Lovey's husband.
He did stand in for Mrs. Howell.
I could have been Mr. Magoo, too.
Well, we'll learn more about that as we go into Yay or Nay. In the meantime, joining us tonight, she is the co-host of Close Encounter. Lisa Jandovitz is here. Never tried out for any Gilligan's Island part as far as we know. And he is a former SEAL and FBI agent. Jonathan Gilliam is back. Not to be confused, but Gilligan is back on the show. Welcome all. It's time for the Daily Download. So today, prosecutors announcing that the co-pilot responsible for purposely crashing Germanwings flight 9525, killing all on board, had a medical condition he hid from his employer. When searching Andreas Lubitz's home, prosecutors did not find a suicide note, but did find a doctor's note excusing him from work on the day of the crash. As you can imagine, the co-pilot's mental state is the focus of the investigation. Should he have been flying? Should Germanwings management have grounded the pilot? What was going on in the pilot's head? Earlier today, our own Steve Malzberg had a chance to speak to America's psychologist, Dr. Jeffrey Gardier.
Yes, it was a mass murder, but at the same time, this is someone who wanted to kill himself,
right,
but not in a way that was private, in a way that was selfish, in a way that hurt so many people.
Steve and Dr. Gardier continued.
In this particular case, this is someone who had more than a depression. Depressed people don't kill other people. Depressed people end up hurting themselves many times. So this was a situation of someone who had some sort of a severe personality disorder and maybe even some psychosis going on.
Steve then asked Dr. Gardier how easy it is to hide mental illness.
Can you fool the world and then just do something like this?
Well, this may have been someone who was not only fooling the world, but fooling himself and being in denial as to how serious his issues were. And then he imploded, regrettably, horrifically took out 149 other people with him.
It's pretty scary stuff. Mental illness is not some small problem. Look at these stats from the National Alliance of Mental Illness, or on mental illness. 1 in 4 adults, approximately 61.5 million Americans, soak in that number for a moment, experience mental illness in a given year. 1 in 17, about 13.6 million, live with a serious mental illness such as schizophrenia, major depression, or bipolar disorder. 13.5 million people have a major mental illness. So based on those stats, some have to be pilots, bus drivers, or any other position that requires being responsible for the safety of other people. Rick, Lufthansa knew this guy had a problem. They let him become a pilot, and anyway, could this have been prevented, I think is the question.
You know what, I gotta be honest. I'm very uncomfortable with the way the story is developing amongst all the media. We don't know. We have no idea. Now, there are certain clues that we're getting, but you know, I hear them all talking about the doctor's note. Well, you know, I got a doctor's note not to go to work because I had the flu. So, you know, we really need to know what that problem was. What I don't understand, while everybody's getting all excited about this new piece of evidence, why didn't anybody call the doctor?
Right.
And say what was wrong with this
They're
guy.
not revealing what was in that.
Yeah,
what was
I mean,
in that
we don't know enough to be leaping to the conclusions we're leaping to.
But I think, and we spoke about this earlier, I think a big reason that people are leaping forward is because the fear that most of us have. We were talking about this in terms of flying. Every one of us that gets on a plane, we're giving up control to whoever is in control of that plane, those pilots. And to feel that, gee, it's unknown, as you can have somebody there with such a serious problem, mental illness, that is in control, and something like this can happen. We want to make sure that it can happen in this country.
I'm willing to bet that the next time all of us fly, maybe not you, Jonathan, you're a little more braver than we are, but it's the first thing you think of. You're going to walk through, when you go down the tarmac and you walk into the plane, you're looking into the cabin, you're going to wonder, can I trust this guy or
Right.
girl? Right, John?
That's absolutely true. And unfortunately, there's no policy in place for how they screen pilots. Some places will do a preliminary psychological evaluation, but long term, there's no psychological evaluations that happen again and again. And I think, one of the biggest things that we're facing, whether it be gun control or now we're talking about pilots, is that mental illness. Back in the day, I'll finish that thought, but back in the day, the plague was killing everybody. And then they came out with basically a shot that you could take, and then, now you're treated for that, all right? There's no, and so we don't take the plague serious anymore. Right? Why aren't we doing that with mental illness? All these people, we should start looking at mental illness seriously and saying, hey, listen, it's okay if you have these types of things. It's better that you tell us and we deal with it than you go and crash a plane and kill 150 people.
Right.
You know
But-
what, Joe,
go ahead,
also, the thing is, there was something there during his training. We don't know how significant, but there was a type of a red flag in that he stopped training because whether they say he was going through depression or he was burned out, and
So do you think, though, that every airline should then say, I'm seeing a mental problem here? Degrees means something, of course, but you may suffer from a little depression. Sorry, you can't take this job.
not a little depression, though. There was a reason that he stopped, and I think that needed to be looked at. There was a reason that his training was
Well, I
stopped.
don't mean him a little depression.
Oh.
I wonder what the level, where that line is, where you
Right,
could say
right.
you're allowed to fly a plane where you're responsible for 150, 200 people, or you're not, right? And he flew for over 100 hours, so.
They so closely watch the medications that pilots take that if you're sick and you take certain medications, you can't fly. Right. Why isn't it the case that, all these, and the question that Rick asked is why this is being reported in the media. One of the things that's definitely coming out as I watch all these pilots talk is that they are desperately trying to keep any overwatch from happening. And I understand that, but at the same time, they say, well, this doesn't happen often enough. If it happens once, 150 people are killed. If a bus driver from New York City is not feeling good and he crashes his bus, you're going to have 20 people have headaches because they have a concussion.
Or they could be killed, but I
They
take
could
your
be,
point.
but you see.
Here's some stats that I think you'll find interesting. FAA report from 2014. 8 in 2,758 fatal aviation accidents between 2003 and 2012 were suicides. All right.
Interesting.
So think about that. 8 in 2,800, we'll call
Yeah.
it. Right?
Right.
Boy, so I just wonder, to Rick's point, do we overreact in these situations? I get you should reform to a certain extent, but you said it yesterday, and it sounds cold in a certain to extent, but sometimes you can't prevent things. Stuff
Can't.
happens.
I'm going to break in because the reason I've been looking at my
Okay,
screen is
5
there's
seconds.
breaking news. Amanda Knox's murder conviction has been overturned by an Italian court.
So let's talk about that more when we get back. Amanda Knox's guilty verdict overturned. Interesting. We'll talk about that in a moment. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax. And welcome back to Daily Wrap. I'm Joe Concha, along with my partner, Rick Unger, along with Lisa Jandovitz and Jonathan Gilliam. Before we get to news about Secretary of State John Kerry in Geneva and the talks around Iranian nuke negotiations, Rick Unger does have some breaking news that just came to us a couple minutes ago regarding Amanda Knox. Mr. Unger, a lawyer.
We are learning that Amanda Knox's case was heard. We know it was on appeal for the second time. She's actually been like a ping pong ball. She was convicted, it was upheld, then her conviction was set aside, then an appeals court said no, guilty. Anyhow, this has been going back and forth. Well, this was the highest case, and they have overturned her conviction. They have also overturned the conviction of her co-defendant, who was her boyfriend, Rafael Solicito. So as it stands right now, they're both in good shape. However, it does go back to yet another court where this could actually happen again. This is the Italian
Another
legal system.
Italian court it goes back
It goes
to,
back to
so-
the Italian court where theoretically they could yet again retry it and rehear it. I don't think that's
Now,
likely.
she served time, though, in
She
Italy.
did. She served 4 years. Yes.
But is she, so explain to the viewers, because even I'm getting confused.
Right.
Is she now,
Right now
when
she's
they
free.
overturned it and they said that she's not guilty,
She's free.
because I already thought she was found not guilty.
She was, and then a court, after she had already
that's
come back
okay.
to the U.S., they retried it. She was
Right.
found guilty in abstention,
But she
and
was
that's
already
what
here.
was being appealed.
So
Yes.
they obviously don't have the same law that we do, that once you're found
They
not
don't have
guilty,
double
jeopardy.
you don't
No,
have
Right,
they
right.
don't have double jeopardy.
So how about
Good
this
point.
scenario? She comes back here, starts a life, Italy calls and said, we want you back.
They would have to commence extradition proceedings.
Right.
And it would be very, very tricky because it's unlikely in this particular case that the U.S. government would be willing to play ball.
Right.
So
because of
the
our own
government
law
has-
around double jeopardy.
Yeah,
so
and
wait
our
a minute.
government has to agree to extradite her. They can't just come and get her. And I think, given that she was tried a few times, she's been found not guilty even prior to this appeal. I don't think we would have extradited her.
That's interesting. Well, I'm happy just for the fact that we'll never have to hear these two words ever again, or maybe we will.
We may.
Foxy Knoxy.
Yeah.
Forgot about that.
Worst nickname ever.
Do you think
She
maybe you're the
may have
last-
killed somebody. Let's call her Foxy.
Maybe you're the last
Right.
person to ever say it.
I forgot about that.
What do you
that's
think?
not the case. Not at all. And she really isn't that foxy. Anyway.
Oh, that's not nice.
Well, I'm just saying. She's free. She's happy. I
She's
can
got a
decide.
sure
mom and
she's
a
relieved.
dad. Come on,
Anyway,
they think she is.
Secretary of State John Kerry in Geneva trying to come to some sort of agreement with Iran regarding its nuclear program. By the White House self-imposed deadline, Mr. Kerry was asked what would happen if he is unable to come to a deal with Iran.
Iran would have the ability to go right back spinning its centrifuges and enriching to the degree they want, if that's what they choose. And the sanctions will not hold because those other people who deem the plan to be reasonable will walk away and say, you do your thing, we'll do ours.
I would think somebody married to Teresa Heinz would have more than one tie. It's the same light blue long.
Every day.
Every day. He's like
A blue
Netanyahu.
tie.
He wears
Yeah,
the same tie.
Every day.
Speaking of which, Secretary Kerry then directed the next comment squarely at the GOP and the aforementioned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Anybody standing up in opposition to this has an obligation to stand up and put a viable, realistic alternative on the table. And I have yet to see anybody do that.
And the Washington Free Beacon is reporting that, quote, U.S. negotiators are said to have given up ground on demands that Iran be forced to disclose the full range of its nuclear activities at the outset of a nuclear deal, a concession experts say would gut the verification the Obama administration has vowed would stand as the crux of a deal with Iran. That's not a big deal or anything. Jonathan Gilliam, let's start with you. If we can't trust and verify, then what's the point of even signing a deal in the first place?
The whole thing about negotiating with Iran is like saying to a bully, at school, we'll let you carry brass knuckles, okay? But don't hit anybody with them, I mean, the foreign policy as it goes to Iran in these negotiations should be this, because of their record and because of who they are and their stances across the board, we should just say, listen, you're not going to have anything nuclear, and if you try to do it, then we're going to eliminate your entire administration. I mean, what else are you going to do with these guys? You think
eliminate their entire administration by force? I guess that's the only way you could probably do that.
That's the only way you could do it. But the reality is they only understand force. In a country like that, if they get nuclear weapons, they're going to use force. There's just no doubt about it.
Well, they did say they want to wipe Israel off the
Yeah, they
map.
did say
I don't understand how the talks can continue if they're failing to divulge whether they had previously ever, had nuclear weapons or attempted to build them. How can you continue if they're not being forthright? And
Well, as a world power, how can you allow people to have nuclear weapons if they say they want to wipe a country off the earth?
Rick, here's my question. We seem to have the leverage, I would think, because Iran's economy is in trouble. They want these sanctions lifted so they can get healthy again.
Right.
And we seem to be giving up everything just to beat this deadline that no one cares about.
Yeah, again, I'm going to point out what I consistently point out is we don't really know. We just keep hearing these rumors. We'll know, I think, next week. It's a very strange scenario going on. I actually agree with Kerry on the first part. I haven't heard people propose viable options. However, if this latest rumor is true and they're not going to be forced to disclose all of their nuclear or whatever you want to call them locations, well, it's absurd. It means we can't possibly monitor them because we don't even know where they all are. So yes, I would have to say if they're trying to force that as part of the deal, there can be no deal. But we have to wait and see. Making this even crazier is what's going on in Yemen right now, where we are now lined up with the other Arab states against Iran. This has become a proxy war. Iran is supporting the Houthi Shias who are trying to take over the government. That would not be good for us because you'll see Al-Qaeda on the peninsula moving right in, and Iran is backing them. The rest of us are against them.
In Tikrit, it's U.S. forces with Iranian
Iran.
forces.
Right.
And Shia there as well, taking on Sunnis, basically ISIS. It's
insane.
nuts.
This is, and no offense to you guys that have law degrees, but this is where being, lawyers step in and executives that don't have enough experience to make these decisions, they step in and they make, the tail does not know what the head is doing, and everything is completely, out of whack.
It's just out of whack.
I don't think that. I think this group knows about what's going on in Yemen. That group may know what's going on in Iran, but none of them are thinking realistically. They're thinking legally, and that is a really completely different thing.
I'm actually going to go further for you. You'll like this. I don't think it's a question of legal or that. I think it's a question of there's no denying a very failed foreign policy in the Middle East.
And what do you think is going to happen though with the deal? Do you think that
may not happen at all?
I have a feeling that's going to be the outcome.
May not happen
that this thing is just going to break down because maybe the U.S. will finally show some backbone and say, that's too much you're asking for.
They're not going to have a choice.
Mullahs. Coming up next, wait till you hear what a school principal made a 7-year-old student do. It's outrageous. This is the Daily Wrap.
Eddie, is there anything you can't do? You take my very breath away, I swear. Look at this.
Yeah, let me be clear. My dog would never stand for that. We have to drug him actually when he get his hair cut fixed. If he actually bites the not at all. Anyway, that of course was the 1990 25-year-old film Edward Scissorhands with the now irrelevant Johnny Depp. Welcome back to the show.
Harsh, you are killing people today.
They can only do so many Pirates of the Caribbean without. Movies aren't making any money anymore. Let's face it. You can only play an eccentric so many times.
He'll be back.
Maybe. We'll see. Anyway, while we're on the topic of bizarre haircuts, the day after a 7-year-old boy got a military-style haircut to honor his older stepbrother who is in the military, his mother got an email from the son's principal at Bobby Ray Memorial Elementary, a school named, ironically enough, after a Vietnam veteran, saying that the haircut was distracting and needed to be fixed or he could not return to school. The principal wrote, and we have quotes, "I have the utmost respect for the military and its members. However, we are not a military school and the boy's haircut is against our rules." The boy's mother tried to reason with the principal, but in the end wound up having to completely shave her son's head. The boy's mother proceeded to go to the local paper, good for her, with the story, and it turns out not only does her son's school not prohibit military-style haircuts, but none of the elementary schools in their district do either. Rick Unger, we mentioned you're a lawyer before. Does the principal have any standing here?
No, he's a moron. I mean, when I was in school, you'd get in trouble because your hair was too long. It was down to your shoulders, and that did violate school rules. This kid, his hair was short, so it was a little longer on top. So what? I don't get it. There's something profoundly wrong with this principal. He should not be in charge of children.
Lisa, before we get to Jonathan.
Oh, okay, that's exactly right.
It was an arbitrary decision by this principal. As you said, it's not district policy, and shaving the haircut was distracting before, but shaving his head is not going to be distracting. It absolutely makes no sense, and good for the mother to make this public. But we were talking about this before. The principal's name should be out there.
Yeah,
absolutely. You're right about that.
And he's emulating somebody we would consider a hero.
Right.
What are we telling a kid that's bad?
Now, Jonathan, we have a rule for all guests that sit in that chair that they have to shave their heads before entering my school.
So we want you to have that haircut.
I follow rules. I used to have that haircut.
Did you? We want to see it again.
But I think this is a good example that, I'm not sure. I think they're saying that it might be a she, the principal. But here's the fact. Stupidity knows no sex, it knows no race, it knows no gender. You can be stupid across the board. So whether this is, I think it is a female principal, stupid. I mean, this school was named after, I got it right here, David Robert Bobby Ray, who gave his life on March 19th, 1969.
There he is.
And was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. The school was named after this heroic man, and this kid goes in and gets his hair cut to emulate somebody who is serving, and they make this kind of a stupid decision.
There's no way to defend this. Anybody who
No,
would try and
I-
defend this is out of their mind. It's
Absolutely.
Just
I don't
profoundly
even think the
wrong.
principal came out and say with any statement. How can she?
We don't have the principal's name. However, what we do have, ladies and gentlemen, is the principal's father. And he once ran a softball team in a town called Springfield. Apparently had a big problem with one of the players whose hair, or at least sideburns, were too long. We have the clip exclusively on Newsmax. Roll it.
Mattingly! I thought I told you to trim those sideburns! Go home! You're off the team for good!
Fine. Still like him better than Steinbrenner.
I remember when Rick was acting in that part.
Yeah,
Haircut like that. That's a good look.
It was after I did my stint on Gilligan's
Gilligan's
Island.
Island, yeah.
Right, exactly. So what happens next? I would think, since she was smart enough to go to the local paper, and now we're talking about it on national television, that I have a feeling that this won't be a problem by Monday.
Well, it's too late. He already shaved his
Right,
head.
already shaved it.
Right,
Will
but going forward.
Right. Will there be an apology made?
We want her name because we want to roast her on TV. She deserves it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
For putting the child and the mother through that.
Yeah.
I want to say this to all the people watching this show, that when somebody gets mad because, they have the 10 Commandments in in whatever public building, or when somebody does something like this and makes a kid shave his head, everybody go to school with your head shaved like that. If somebody does it with the 10 Commandments and they take the monument out because one atheist makes a big deal, everybody that lives in that state should go get a shirt that has the 10 Commandments on it and hang out around that municipal
I'm
building.
not sure that the issues are exactly the same.
They are the same, and I'll tell you why. Because people can make it known how kind of ridiculously stupid some of these things are, and they can start voicing their opinions together as a whole. That's
Based
the
on
point
one
I'm trying to
person
make.
making
That's
a
correct.
statement. Exactly. I agree with that, actually.
We hear about how horrible kids are these days, but this kid should be applauded, as we are
this
right now.
kid.
To actually
Good for this
do
kid.
that, a war that started 30 years, 40 years before he was ever born, amazing. Anyway, coming up next, it's potluck time, and a little later, our favorite segment, Yay or Nay. This is the Daily Wrap, only on Newsmax TV. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. It's potluck time. This is part of the show where we go around the table and share our favorite stories of the day. Ladies first, Lisa Janovitz, what do you got?
Well, it is a story about the Southwest flight. A college kid was not allowed to board a flight. He was flying from Dallas to Chicago wearing a T-shirt that apparently there's a show on Comedy Central. I found out from my kids called Broad City. But he was wearing a T-shirt that said Broad Effin' City. Actually spelled out, and he
What
first
does effing mean?
and he first
Friendly?
Forget about it.
friendly city. And he first got on the flight. I guess he had a jacket on the first leg of the trip. The the plane was diverted to St. Louis. He took his jacket off, attempted to get on, and he was told very politely by an airline official or airline worker, please, can you put your jacket back on, or can you change your shirt? Can you put the shirt inside out? He said no. And this was all on videotape, which has since been removed online. But we have the transcript, and he was pretty agitated, and he said no. He was not allowed to get on the flight. And Southwest says that they do have a contract carriage that forbids lewd, obscene, or patently offensive clothing and behavior. He was allowed to get on another flight, a later flight. He changed his shirt, and he actually spoke very nicely then later on about the airline. My feeling is, I think maybe his parents got a hold of him and said, "Are you crazy? Get that shirt off and get on the plane."
I thought the whole way you were going with this that you were going to defend him.
No, because I could understand. Airlines have rules, and some of them we don't agree with, but that's their right. And if we want to get on, then don't fly Southwest if you don't agree with it.
Yeah, exactly, Rick. What if I had my daughter with me and she can't read yet, but what if she could? I don't need her seeing that.
And not only
Sorry.
that, I'm
Free
with
speech.
Lisa. When you buy a ticket subject to the rules of the airline when they sell you the ticket. In fact, it says it right on the ticket, and you sign something.
It's true. It says
So-
you can't say broad effing street.
It says that
Well,
specifically.
if that kind of a T-shirt is not allowed, nobody put a gun to his head and said, buy a ticket on that airline. So if he does, he's got to honor
First
the
and
rules.
foremost, though, that is McLovin. So you know he's going to do something.
It does look like McLovin.
So that's the first thing. But when I was in high school, there was a guy, Mike Roberts. I don't know if he's going to be watching this, but we were in, I can't even remember what class. It might have been typing class, and he comes in with a shirt, and I think I can say this on air. He comes in, sits down, and he takes his jacket off, same way.
Uh-huh.
He was there, he did this on purpose, but it says Van Halen kicks ass. Well, you know, this is in the South back in the 80s.
Right.
I mean, the teacher immediately, she just pointed the door, get out of here. I mean.
Did he argue it?
No, but he did it on purpose. He knew he was getting in trouble. This kid knew when he got on the airplane, he was just being rebellious.
I
should have been kicked off.
I need context around that T-shirt. Was this early 80s? In terms of
Was
David
it
the
David
Roth
Roth?
band, right?
Van Halen.
Or is this Van Hagar?
86.
That's-
right around 86.
That's Van Hagar.
That's
I
Van
think,
Hagar.
isn't it?
That's a Sammy
Yeah.
Hagar.
In
version
which
of Van
case he
Halen.
was right.
I kind of like Sammy
Oh, I
Hagar
love
with
Sammy
Van
Hagar.
Halen.
Love Sammy Hagar.
Oh, they did Wings,
But we
right?
digress.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
we
some
do.
sort of
We digress.
besides the point.
Anyway, Jonathan, you are our second chef tonight.
Okay, so we have this new controversy with the DEA having evidently a sex party somewhere down south, and the prostitutes were paid for with money from drug lords, basically. This is just another example of whether it be the DEA, the Secret Service down there with their prostitution issue, the Secret Service, you know, not being able to stop people getting into the White House, all the way up. We now have an FBI agent who I actually was in class with that just got arrested in Riverside, California, for stealing money for years and years. I mean, the problem here is that, you know, these people are given national security secrets in a lot of cases, but secrets, and they're in charge of information that if they're caught with a prostitute or if they're caught stealing money, they can be bribed, and it just makes our overall national security stance look bad.
Yeah.
It makes our security look bad. But my thing is, and I know we've gone round and round about this, but I don't think there's any question that you can follow this to the very top with President, Vice President, Secretary of State, head of the CIA, not treating classified information correctly, not having good force protection like in the DOD. And I think that there needs to be an adjustment in government from all levels, where people start taking information seriously and they start taking their job more seriously. Who would go out and have a sex party in South America with prostitutes paid
and
for?
why
I
would
know
they-
some people that would do that. The Secret Service.
Yeah.
And the DEA,
Because it's
apparently.
But at least it wasn't paid for by the cartels.
But why were they
Exactly.
not
They
fired?
can afford it.
Well, I think I saw this on TV. I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they were saying that it was not against policy to have a sex party. It's against policy to have a sex party
With the
money
cartels.
paid for by the cartels.
Oh,
And allegedly, some of the cartel guys were there at the parties with them.
yes.
Right.
Oh,
Well, it's,
okay.
Either way, it's a party that all four of us are probably not going to get invited to. at
And if
some
we
point.
are, I'm not going.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so anyway, we have to take a quick break. But don't worry, when we come back, we'll have even more provocative potluck for you, including my own. This is the Daily Wrap, and it's only on Newsmax TV. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. I'm your host, Joe Conchin. If you're just joining us, we're in the middle of our potluck where we share our favorite stories of the day, and it's my turn. Well, you may have heard earlier this week that the Charlottesville Police Department now says that the whole Rolling Stones story about a gang rape at a UVA fraternity, they don't have enough evidence to move forward with any kind of investigation. In other words, probably bogus. There are more holes in this than Swiss cheese. Washington Post dug into it pretty well, and even the chief witness in the entire incident, her name is Jackie, or at least that's what they call her in the article, she won't even speak to police now as well. So from a media perspective, let's look at how Rolling Stone is handling this for a moment, shall we? If you all go online right now and you were to Google this story, just put in Rolling Stone gang rape into your search engine, all right, on your phone, okay? You will find that this story is still up on rollingstone.com. In other words, you could still read all about it, even though it's now been proven to be a complete hoax. And don't listen to me. The Poynter Institute calls it the worst piece of journalism of 2014. Columbia Journalism Review, same thing. Yet Rolling Stone won't take the story down because they outsourced an investigation to the aforementioned Columbia School of Journalism, who will come back with their findings, we're told, in a week or two. So this is not how you handle things in terms of media. It's one thing if you say we made a mistake, which Rolling Stone still hasn't admitted to because of their outsourced story. It's another thing altogether to keep the story up. It has a disclaimer in the front saying, you know, we may have gotten some things wrong, but they haven't updated it in terms of the police findings or anything like that.
Like the main part of the story.
Yes, exactly. And here's the best part. Jan Wenner, who is the publisher of Rolling Stone and has been since its inception back in way back when, I think it's 45 years now, he says when they get the findings from Columbia, they're going to do a full story on it. Not in Rolling Stone magazine, just in the online edition.
Oh, is that right?
Yes,
Really?
that's exactly right. So, you know, I'm a media guy first, and I just see this unfold, and it just horrifies me. And Rick, I'd love to get your thoughts as well as a fellow journalist.
It's very, very, very surprising. Given everything that surrounded this and the questions raised, you would have thought they would have taken it down immediately. I just did it, by the way. I just picked up my phone and went, and there it is.
Yes.
It's
And I can't
really
believe
surprising.
that they can't take that down. Of
course they can.
Right.
Sure they can.
That's their decision, and also to make a statement, make a public statement. But that would be admitting that they're wrong.
Exactly.
And I'd love to get your take on this because, you know, we've been on several shows with each other, and you're always the media guy. You're the media go-to guy. I've always had a problem that media is not held to a higher legal standard. If you're going to report something, you better make sure you're fact. Just like if I went to court as an FBI agent and I brought information in front of the court that was a hearsay, and I injure somebody, I'm going to be, I mean, I know you could be held liable, but the court system should hold media to a higher legal standard. I just think that we're to this day and age now where the information is readily available and it can injure people.
Exactly right. But the good news, to answer your question, is that fraternity nationally will be suing Rolling Stone.
Right.
And according to Rick, and we had Heather Hansen on a couple days ago, they'll probably win.
It should be criminally held higher. Like if you go out and you injure somebody, the court, it should be very easy for you.
Jan Wenner in prison? Ooh, that would be
and
a
the problem
pleasure
is it has to be
watch.
intentional to be criminal, and it usually isn't. It's just sloppy.
Yeah, sloppy. And
Yeah,
this-
but as a federal agent, sloppy gets me put in jail.
No, but in most crimes
Right.
it doesn't.
In this case, it
has
was a
to
matter
be.
of a writer who loved a narrative and just ran with one side of his
Right,
story and not another. Rick, I've eaten into your time too much.
That's right. Basically, most Americans, as we know, are not very happy with the notion of welfare, subsidies, government paying people, and we all complain about that. Well, I want to introduce you to a new kind of welfare recipient. We call them welfare ranchers. Now, do you know what a welfare rancher is? It's somebody who owns acres upon acres upon acres, thousands of acres of land. They have livestock, they have cattle, and they enter into these agreements with the federal government, leases. And these leases entitle them to graze their livestock on federal lands. They get this at an extremely low price, but that's not all that they get. It turns out that the government ends up doing a lot of the jobs they would have to do themselves if they were grazing on their land, like getting rid of the wild horses, like replanting grass after they've been grazed out. It amounts to over $1 billion a year of taxpayer money. So who are some of these welfare queens and kings? Name Charles and David Koch, ring a bell? How about Ted Turner? How about cellular giant Bruce McCaw? How about W. Barron Hilton? And my favorite, anybody remember Cliven Davis, the hero, quote unquote, who fought off the government to protect his right to steal our money, the Bundy Ranch? If you want to come down on welfare, folks, come down on everybody who's getting welfare.
Wow. Well, Rick, you get the last word in your own
Always
potluck
love that.
because we shortchanged you on that one. But we'll be back in a few minutes with the best part of the show, in my opinion. It's Yay or Nay. This is the Daily Wrap, and it's only on Newsmax TV. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. Before we get to Yay or Nay, I want to let you know about a developing story on Newsmax.com about Hillary Clinton, get this, permanently deleting all her emails when she wiped her server clean. This is according to Trey Gowdy. He's the chairman of a House committee investigating the 2012 attacks in Benghazi. So this is a big breaking story. Certainly go to Newsmax.com as we gather more information here. Certainly quite a turn for the former Secretary of State. And I have a feeling we'll be talking about this more on Monday if we don't do a special Saturday edition on it.
Emails.
More emails indeed. So anyway, it's time for yay or nay. And first up, after 30 years in the Senate, which felt like 60, Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid announced today on his Twitter account, interestingly enough, that he will not be seeking re-election next year. In an attached video message, Reid said, and we quote, "We have to make sure that the Democrats take control of the Senate again. And I feel it's inappropriate for me to soak up all those resources on me when I could be devoting those resources to the caucus. And that's what I intend to do." Many analysts now say New York Senator Charles Schumer is poised to take Reid's position as Democratic leader. Senate Minority Whip, it still takes a little getting used to. Dick Durbin of Illinois is a favorite, but he said today he's backing off and endorses Schumer, so looking good for Chuck. Another possibility to fill the vacancy is Senator Patty Murray of Washington. So a two-part question, everybody. After being in leadership for so long, has Harry Reid done more harm than good, and will Reid win Dancing with the Stars next season? Rick Unger.
No, he has not done more harm than good. And no, he will not win Dancing with the Stars next season.
Interesting. I feel you have a different answer than Rick.
I will say that it's time. He's been in office for 30 years, and I would say he has a chance on Dancing with the Stars.
Fascinating, but more harm than good.
He's going to go as a pirate.
No, not really more good. I would say so.
Jonathan?
I'd say absolutely more harm than good. And I'll just say this. The state of the way this country is right now, anybody that's in government has done harm for it if they've been in for more than 5 years.
That might be a very good point.
I agree. I will say yay to the harm part. Certainly Harry didn't seem to want to negotiate very often. And as for Dancing with the Stars, if Rick is on next season, as is rumored, ain't happening.
Only if we don't do the remake of Gilligan's Island, because I am up for the role of Thurston Howell Jr. again.
That's true. So would you ever agree, speaking of television, to a televised arranged marriage to someone you've never met? That's what the A&E producers are asking 6 singles to do on their show, Married at First Sight. Now in its 2nd season. Never heard of the first. How did I miss this? Anyway, described as, quote, extreme social experiment, unquote. 6 singles are matched up with the help of a sexologist, a psychologist, a sociologist, and a spiritual advisor who create, quote, what they believe are 3 perfect couples based on scientific matchmaking, unquote. The couples are then married off without ever seeing each other, or even knowing each other's names. I used to call that Saturday night. It's like singing.
Oh my God.
No, really, it's like signing up for the Tinder. This is how it works, from what I understand.
The Tinder.
But it's a little different. Okay, I admit. Only because your first date is your damn wedding. So, panel. Here's the question after absorbing all of that. Has reality television finally run out of ideas, Jonathan?
Well, yeah, they're just starting to emulate the Indian culture, I believe, now is what they're doing. But I will tell you, I did watch this show, and it's actually quite impressive. And I think there's more thought process and study that goes into who gets picked and who's paired than most people give in a lot of their marriages these days. I mean, I was actually quite impressed with the way that they chose these people.
I have to watch
now I
the
have
show.
to watch
Now
it
we gotta
myself.
all go
I
watch the
immediately
show.
was going to say it was crazy, and I said,
if it was just people picking people, that'd be one thing. But they have psychologists and
the
sexologists,
sexologists.
and, spiritual people.
Rick.
They ran out of ideas for reality TV shows years ago. Look, I mean, we're all on TV. We all like being on TV. You gotta want to be on TV, though, really bad to marry somebody you haven't met.
Right?
Well, I think the TV show, yeah, you're right. But in real life,
Yeah.
I think this probably
No, I
something
mean,
that's
I
gonna
can
happen
understand
before
the
long.
benefit of that, yeah.
but to
be
do it on
TV,
television.
Okay, I was a yay. They're out of ideas, but Jonathan convinced me. I am now.
have to
a,
do
We're all
it.
going home
nay.
to see it now.
It's like maybe the eHarmony more is like, the 27
Right,
different
27
matches. Anyway,
questions.
finally tonight, you can eat a Big Mac while wearing a Big Mac. McDonald's is now selling Big Mac themed household accessories and clothing in the new Big Mac shop. Yep, you can purchase thermals for men and women, bed linens, and wallpaper. We'll soon purchase dog coats, not in your life, raincoats and rain boots as well. As bizarre as it seems, it should be noted that all the proceeds do go to the Big Mac shop, from the Big Mac shop, will go to the Ronald McDonald House Charities. So, I'm rushing because we're very low on time. Would you ever buy McDonald's clothing, Jonathan, quickly?
Only because of what the charity is, and the charity's good.
Lisa.
I would agree with that, only because of the charity, otherwise not.
I love that charity. I've been on the board of a branch of that charity, and we're actually redoing our living room with that wallpaper.
Nice.
Good for you. I'm a yay as well, and even if the charity wasn't involved, I'm absolutely fine. It's just not for the dog. Anyway, panel, we have to run a happy hour. Thank you for joining. We appreciate it. I'm Joe Concha. Thanks for watching the Daily Wrap. Good night and good luck. I'm rushing.